In a quiet valley, far away from the noise of the modern world, there was a small village that held an ancient secret. At the edge of this village stood a garden unlike any other. It wasn't famous for beautiful flowers or rare plants. No, this garden was famous for something much deeper. It was called the Garden of Regrets. The garden had been there for hundreds of years, carefully maintained by an old keeper named Thomas. Thomas was a man of few words, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold countless stories. Every morning, he would walk through the garden's iron gates, tending to the plants with gentle care. But these weren't ordinary plants. Each tree, each flower, each bush in this garden represented someone's deepest regret. The village had a tradition. When someone carried a burden of regret so heavy that it affected their daily life, they would visit the Garden of Regrets. Thomas would greet them at the gate, hand them a small seed, and say only one thing: plant your regret here. What happens next depends entirely on you. A young woman named Emma came to the garden one autumn morning. She was only 28 years old, but she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. 5 years ago, she had a chance to start her own business, following her passion for design, but fear held her back. She chose the safe path, the comfortable job, the predictable life. Now, she watched as her former classmates and friends pursued their dreams while she felt stuck and unfulfilled. Her regret had become a constant companion, whispering in her ear every single day. Thomas met her at the gate and studied her face for a moment. Without asking what troubled her, he handed her a small seed and repeated his timeless instruction: plant your regret here. What happens next depends entirely on you. Emma took the seed and walked into the garden. She was amazed by what she saw. There were massive trees that reached toward the sky, their branches thick and strong. There were beautiful flowering plants that seemed to glow with inner light. But there were also dark corners of the garden, choked with thorny weeds and twisted vines that seemed almost alive with negativity. Thomas appeared beside her and explained, "Every plant in this garden started as a seed of regret, just like the one you're holding. But what happened to each seed depended on what the person chose to do next. You see those magnificent trees? Those belong to people who watered their regrets with reflection and learning. They visited their seed every week, thought deeply about their mistakes, and asked themselves what lessons could be learned. Over time, their regret transformed into wisdom. The tree became a symbol of growth, strength, and understanding. These people no longer carry the burden of their regret because they turned it into something beautiful." Emma looked at the towering trees with wonder. Then her eyes moved to the dark corners filled with weeds. "And what about those?" she asked, though she already feared the answer. Thomas nodded slowly. "Those belong to people who planted their regret and then abandoned it. They thought that just leaving it here would make it disappear, but regret that is ignored doesn't vanish. It grows wild and out of control. It spreads like poison. Those weeds represent regrets that turn into bitterness, anger, and self-destruction. Some of those people are still alive, but they're trapped by the very thing they tried to forget." Emma felt a chill run through her. She understood now. This wasn't just about planting a seed and walking away. This was about choice. This was about what you do with your mistakes and missed opportunities. Thomas led her to an empty plot of soil and handed her a small gardening tool. "Plant your seed here, then decide what kind of person you want to be. Will you water this seed with wisdom, turning your regret into growth, or will you abandon it, letting it become a weed that chokes your future?" Emma knelt down and planted the seed carefully. As she covered it with soil, she made a promise to herself. She would not let this regret define her in a negative way. Yes, she had missed an opportunity 5 years ago. Yes, she had let fear control her decision, but that didn't mean her story was over. She stood up and looked at Thomas. "I'll be back every week. I want to learn from this. I want this to become a tree of wisdom, not a garden of weeds." Thomas smiled, the first real smile Emma had seen on his face. "Then you've already begun your transformation." Weeks turned into months. Emma returned to the garden every Sunday morning. At first, it was painful. She had to face her fears honestly, admitting why she had really held herself back. She had to accept that she had let other people's opinions matter more than her own dreams. She had to acknowledge that she had underestimated herself. But something beautiful began to happen. As she watered her seed and spent time in reflection, she noticed a small sprout emerging from the soil. It was fragile at first, barely visible. But with each visit, with each honest conversation with herself, it grew stronger. And as her plant grew, so did Emma. She started taking small steps toward her dreams again. She took an online course in design, she started a side project on weekends, she stopped comparing her chapter 1 to everyone else's chapter 10. She began to see her regret not as a failure, but as a teacher. 2 years passed. Emma stood in the garden of regrets, looking at what her seed had become. It was now a young tree, not the tallest in the garden, but strong and healthy with vibrant green leaves. Thomas stood beside her, proud of what she had accomplished. "You understand now," he said softly. "Regret is not your enemy. It's only an enemy if you let it become one. Every person who achieves something meaningful carries regrets. The difference is what they choose to do with them. Some people let their regrets become excuses, others let them become fuel." Emma touched the bark of her tree gently. "Thank you for teaching me this. I almost let my regret destroy my future. Instead, it became the foundation of my growth." Thomas nodded. "The garden taught you what I could never put into words. Now go and live fully. Your tree will always be here, a reminder of how far you've come." Emma left the Garden of Regrets that day, but she never forgot its lesson. She went on to start her design business, and yes, it was hard, and yes, she made mistakes, but she faced each challenge with the wisdom she had learned. When new regrets appeared, and they did, she knew exactly what to do with them. She would acknowledge them, learn from them, and let them make her stronger. The Garden of Regrets still stands in that quiet valley. Thomas still tends to it every morning, and people still come with their heavy burdens, seeking peace. Some visit their seeds regularly and watch them become trees of wisdom. Others plant their seeds and never return, wondering why their lives feel choked by invisible weeds. The choice, as Thomas always says, depends entirely on you. Your regrets can become your greatest teachers or your worst enemies. The seed is the same. The difference is what you choose to do after you plant it. Will you water it with reflection and growth, or will you abandon it and let it become a weed? The garden is waiting. The choice is yours.